I'm Aryeh Schwartz, along with Rachel Galligan, and welcome to the Winsidr Show, where it's all about the W. 'Twas the night before free agency, when all through the league, every GM's phone was ringing to see what could be. If you like our show, please consider joining our Patreon community, patreon.com/Winsidr. For less than a cup of coffee a month, you can directly show support for the hard work we do covering the W. And don't forget to see our amazing staff's written content over at winsidr.com. That's winsidr.com. Looking for tickets for an upcoming WNBA season? Thanks to our sponsors, TickPick, you don't have to worry. The original no-fee ticket site and official ticketing partner of the WNBA champions, Chicago Sky. Use the link tickpick.com/Winsidr. That's tickpick.com/Winsidr for all your upcoming ticket purchases for WNBA, NFL, NBA, or any other event. All right, Rachel, let's talk about what has happened, what we
Whew.
expect to happen, and then just AU, right? Like we got to touch on AU. It's going on right now in Vegas.
Yeah.
Obviously it's not WNBA, but it does have WNBA implications that I think are definitely worth discussing. Let me just do a quick rundown of what we've seen happen so far, and then we'll kind of just reflect back and chat on this. Right? Sound good?
Sure. Yep.
Sweet. Brianne January to Seattle, Angel McCautry to Minnesota, Kalia Copper back to Chicago, Mercedes Russell back to Seattle, Crystal Bradford to Chicago, Elizabeth Williams to DC, Maisha Hines-Allen back to DC, Courtney Williams, a year or two getaway, but she's back to Connecticut, Steph Dolson to her hometown New York, Jonquel Jones resigns back to Connecticut, Tiffany Hayes to Atlanta, Sylvia Fowles back to Minnesota, Emma maybe to Chicago. I think the funniest one of all of this is Sylvia Fowles back to Minnesota. A lot of players like to get media attention. A lot of players, agents, teams, whatever, want to kind of get the upper hand and get information out there. Sylvia Fowles don't play that way. Sylvia Fowles is like, I'm putting the information out there. I want people to hear it from me. But just looking back on all of these things, I'm curious for you, is there anything that's really shocked you, anything that really intrigues you or excites you for this coming season?
Oh my God, what kind of loaded question is that?
It's a
um,
Rachel talk for a while thing.
um, I mean, obviously, I think that there's still a lot that's going to take place this week, the coming weeks. A lot that has to be answered. I'm excited about the potential of Chicago running it back. With Copper officially coming back and Candace Parker and this core. How do you not be excited for kind of what that team can be? I mean, and it'll look a little bit different, right? Like, I love the idea of Dolson in New York. I think that makes them exponentially better. Her leadership and everything that she brings to any team. She's always been a phenomenal leader on court, off the court. So I think that I love the trajectory of New York and where that franchise is going, and what Sandy can do with this team. That is his, hopefully, knock on wood, healthy. But then you add a piece like Dolson, and to be determined about Brianna Stewart. I personally would be shocked by that, but hey, we're gonna find out. I would imagine anytime. But Chicago running it back, obviously. Still to be determined on Quigley and Sloot, but the news of Copper, that's huge. I could just keep going down the line. Minnesota, love that Sill's coming back. I think she is still at this point playing some of the best basketball for her career. But there's still so many question marks to sit here and say, oh, I'm super excited about, what's going on in Atlanta. We don't know, like who are they going to end up bringing in during this time? There's so many dominoes that still have to fall to kind of really see, like, as this is being built, what is the makeup of this league going to look like? But of course, those are the top two for me. I think New York and what that team can be, they're going to be a powerhouse. Like that's a force to be reckoned with for years to come. Like I'm not going
I'm
to,
just gonna
my
sorry, I'm
mind's
gonna
not
have
going
to
to change on it.
Rachel, I'm gonna have to interrupt you. As
What?
much as I will stand back and say, like, look, I feel like it's this, right? When you have a hot take or an opinion on a player or something and they prove you wrong, you have to tip your cap to that and acknowledge that you were wrong. Um, Steph Dolson, right? Like key plays towards the end of the finals to really get them over the hump and win that finals, bring home a championship to Chicago. Can't knock that. What I will knock is this idea, and I'm not saying that you're necessarily saying this, but I've seen it around the Twitter sphere. Like everybody's talking as if they totally forgot about the amount of stupid fouls she gets, the amount of flops she gets, um, help defense, and everyone just talks about the positive side of Steph Dolson. There's a reason why she was a top pick. No one's arguing that. There's also a reason why she hasn't become a superstar, right? Like she's just not a superstar. And so while I do like this play, right? As we talked about it, Steph Dolson is essentially the poor man's Liz Cambage. So like,
I mean,
what?
I don't know. I think Steph Dolson is a unicorn in the league. There's not many people similar to Steph Dolson, in my opinion. I don't think you can compare her to anyone else.
But here's my thing. I think you're right, to a degree. But I think she has enough overlap. I'm fine. Rachel disagrees with me. I'm gonna say it. I think she has a lot of similar play to Liz Cambage, except she's not as dominant. Maybe she's a little bit better of a screen giver.
Phenomenal
Screen set,
screener.
phenomenal
Her
screener,
ability to
great,
stretch the floor and knock
great.
down mid-range 17 footers.
Yeah, but I trust Liz to do that also. I mean, Steph Dolson ain't setting records for most points in a game in the league. I would say that Steph's passing ability. I would say
Oh,
that's her
phenomenal.
biggest asset. Her
She's
passing ability.
her IQ, her basketball IQ.
Yes. So basically what I'm saying is I like it as an addition. It gives them solidified player to start next to Natasha Howard. I don't view that as like the end all be all. I think in my mind, at least for New York, what it does to them is it kind of like they're looking for role players. And I think I saw Sandy or Jonathan Kolb say that in some press conference, some interview. They're looking for role players to piece around the core that they already have. And so I really like everyone's gonna be like, oh, hater yay, going back at it. No. I really like Steph Dolson to New York. I like that addition. I just don't think we should be talking about it as like the biggest, most important move in free agency. It's a great move for that team, but realistically, like I don't think it's, a game changer or whatever. The ones that I'm really interested, there's 3 teams I'm really interested in. I guess 4 teams I'm really interested in. Now obviously Minnesota has piqued my interest with the Angel McCautry news, and the more since that news broke a while ago, I believe it was Chris Hayes who broke that a while ago. Since that news broke, obviously I've been super intrigued because I think she like Angel's the type of player you can play off the bench and still have super impactful minutes,
Mm-hmm.
and she can play a variety of positions which the Lynx need, but she at her core is in a position where she overlaps a lot with Kayla McBride, with an Aerial Powers, but because they're going to be bringing her off the bench, most likely, I would assume,
Mm-hmm.
it gives them more depth at all of those positions.
Yep.
But so I'm not going to talk about Minnesota more than I already just did. What I'm really intrigued by is Chicago, right? We know they're losing Dolson. We know, the rumors have been about Diamond to Shields. We don't know. We know Lexi, I believe, signed that training camp contract, so we expect her back to a degree. But I think that like there's Chicago, everyone going into the offseason kind of had this discussion of like, oh, they have to try and bring everyone back and just run it back at that. I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and say like I spoke to James Wade or someone else in Chicago and they told me that's what their original plan was going into free agency. But and I'm not going to say that, the alternative, which seems to be happening now, which is we understand we're not going to be able to, we're going to retool but try and keep our core together. Seems like that's what they're doing. I think that's kind of forward thinking. So I think for me that's really intriguing as a team, just the excitement level of you're coming off a championship
Of course.
and you're making some moves. We hear the news about Crystal Bradford. Obviously she can't sign anything until tomorrow, but I think they're adding some really cool elements. Crystal Bradford is athletic. She can check some of the boxes if you don't bring back Diamond, that Diamond checks. And you know what? If Maisha is going, or sorry, not Maisha, if Emma is going to Chicago, that's just insanely intriguing for Candace
100%.
Parker, Emma Mieseman pairing
Yeah.
with the I mean, yeah, that's just scary. So, what are your thoughts on Chicago? Kind of clearly, in my mind, at least, based off the news that we've heard, um, retooling for a run back as opposed to just trying to re up.
I think you have to. I mean, I think that's got to be the goal. But obviously, Diamond to Shields, phenomenal player. It is going to look different. Steph Dolson was huge in the finals down that stretch. So, it is going to be different. But I also think you add some pieces here that, like, I think has the potential to not even skip a beat. Misaman, obviously, a lot of question marks there. Does that get done? A lot of different speculation and
If that gets
reports.
done, are they the early favorites? I mean, I know Connecticut's kind of scary right now, but
I
are
think that, yeah, we got to talk about Connecticut. I mean, how do you not? I mean, just from a respect standpoint of last year, if this all gets done, if Misaman, and here's the thing, like, and we know early on that she's actually coming over, but that's always a question mark too. If that gets done, then I think it's an early favorite, but you have to kind of be like, what about Connecticut? Because wow. But yeah, I mean, Chicago, I think that I love the move of Crystal Bradford. I've been a huge Crystal Bradford fan my entire career. and she,
Rachel, give that shameless plug for that episode with her.
oh yeah, we did. We had her on the show. When was it? Maybe like early last year, and it was a doozy of a show, man. She's hilarious. Love her. Oh my god. She's just this like unicorn type player. So with the athleticism and the length and her ability to score it, and when she gets hot, like she can just be unconscious, And so I think that she brings an element of I'm just happy, that after everything went down in Atlanta and, that someone was going to pick her up. She's too talented. She's already proven too much, especially, in her play in Atlanta. Like, man, she's appealing, and I think she has a real shot of making the Chicago roster better, or, just kind of seamlessly integrating into that roster from what we can
Under
tell so far.
Yeah, underrated advantage
Mhm.
that I'm gonna throw Chicago's way is Candace Parker. Like, okay, I forget when it was, but there was the Cheryl Reeve has a podcast, and there was one episode where I believe Lindsay Whalen took over the hosting because Cheryl was busy. And in that podcast, Lindsay talked about the struggles they had as a team and individually after their first championship win in 2011. Um, and moving like their mindset for so long was you're an underdog. Like Lindsay Whalen specifically, like she went to the Final Four, University of Minnesota, got to the finals with Connecticut Sun, played successfully with Connecticut Sun, and having like a lot of people don't talk about the mental challenge of when you're trying to reach something you've never attained before, there's a certain drive behind you, a certain fire under your ass, for lack of better terms, excuse the language. And she spoke about the struggle of coming off of that year, off of a championship, and trying to reignite that flame. But I think an advantage, so I think that's going to be a disadvantage to a degree. I'm not going to say 100% degree, 5%, whatever you want to say. But I think a counter to that would be James Wade and Candace Parker, right? Candace Parker, coming off a championship in LA, went back to the finals with LA. Now, they lost in game 5 there, don't get me wrong, in Williams Arena in Minnesota to Lindsay Whalen. But to have that understanding, right? Like it's different when you've been to the finals and won it, and then you've been there again. So you already kind of broke off that rust. And James Wade, coming from an assistant coach in Minnesota who experienced that, that back-to-back fight, I think they're in a better situation than most teams coming off a franchise's first championship. And that's why I think Chicago's a really interesting one.
Mhm. Really good analysis there by you.
Oh, thanks. All right, let's talk about the other teams. I'm super intrigued by Atlanta because anything goes. We've talked to major extents about what we expect from them and what our understanding of what they're looking for is, but obviously it's just a question mark. So I think that's one of the interesting teams.
Mhm.
The other one is Seattle.
Yeah.
Now, excuse me, Seattle's a really interesting one because bringing Beyond January to Seattle has the writing on the wall that Jordan Canada's probably not coming back. With the news of Mercedes Russell, I think that solidifies something in my mind, right? You're solidifying if obviously look, there's the rumors about Jewel Lloyd, there's the rumors or the reports about Stewie meeting with the top brass over in New York, which I think the writing kind of is on the wall after the Dolson signing on that move. I think it's fair to say, and I think some people have talked about this on social, and maybe I'm stealing your line, Rachel, but I think New York's making a long-term play for Stewie versus saying, "Hey, this is the year we can bring her back." Right?
But that's not to say it can't happen this year.
True.
Pieces could still be moved, and it could still happen. Like people think, oh, it's impossible. That's not true. Stewie could still end up in New York. They would just have to, Rebecca Allen at that point and a few other, it's just they'd have to obviously open up the space that they would need to. But again, if I'm just guessing, if I'm a betting woman, it feels like, okay, maybe she does end up signing, a shorter term deal, goes back to Seattle, plays with Sue, and maybe down the road we're seeing her, like this is a relationship build with New York. Again, this is just my speculating, but I do want people to know it is still possible that she could sign in New York. Just because Dolson went doesn't mean it's off the table.
Yeah. No, but I mean, I guess the thing that makes it off the table in my mind, even when I heard all that news, is Stewie and Sue are close, and I think if Sue was retired and this play happens, from New York, this is very, very different. Um, you have to wonder, like with the whole Seattle situation, was it a situation similar to NECA last year in LA where, you know, there was an understanding there and they said, "Hey, we want you to experience free agency and not to feel like a lot of what ifs. Go out and meet with some teams." And she did go meet with some teams. So Seattle's the interesting one for me because adding someone like January in my mind is not the like defensively it's great. But in my mind when I think of Seattle, they played good defense, not, impeccable defense, especially after losing Natasha Howard. I would not say that it was the defensive end of things in Seattle that scared me. It was more so that anytime their defense started to leak a little, they just said, "Cool, turn it up to 10 on offense. Let's run, run, run." And just kind of their pace offensively, their ability to get so many good looks and shots up with so many skilled shooters on that team. It was just a situation of, you know, this is a scary offensive team. So adding January definitely brings kind of the hammer down defensively. So and it's just not going to be the exact same team we're so used to seeing in Seattle. So that's kind of the other team that I'm really intrigued by. Another team is DC, right? Like Elena Deladon, who knows her status, right? There's reports that she's going to be part of camp for the what is it, the World Cup, training camp games in DC that start in like a week or so. But she's not going to be playing in the games. So like I think a lot of people were almost misled that she's taking part in camp, she's playing, she must be good, back to normal, blah blah blah. That's not what I got out of the reports. I'm just to be blunt, like what I got out of the report is she's almost back to full, but we're not going to risk it in exhibition games. Um, and yeah, there's just a lot of questions when it talks about that. But all of that said, the idea of adding a Elizabeth Williams to DC to pair with Deladon is a very intriguing one. I see it similar to the Latoya Sanders play of having someone who's more of a traditional big who, isn't the slowest thing in the world, and pairing that with the likes of an Emma, if she does come back to DC, or the likes of an Elena Deladon, or even a Maisha, who all three of those players, while they can dominate down low, their game is at their best when they have the freedom to move around fully. What are your thoughts?
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with that. I think that still so much to be determined in DC. In my mind, I'm and this is not necessarily for agency, but looking at that number one pick and wondering, okay, what are they going to do with that, and what could potentially happen with that? But obviously, that's down the road. For me, I don't really have a ton of comment on Washington because I'm just still very much in the observing what's taking place. I think bringing back Maisha Hines Allen is a phenomenal move, and I think it shows that long-term investment and just what she's been able to do the last couple years. I mean, she's on fire, and securing that I think is a really solid, deep move. for the Mystics. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to talk about this team until you have a solid grip on Elena Deladon and kind of what that looks like. But you know, it's Mike T. He's going to figure it out. They're going to be just fine. And obviously that core there of, you've got Atkins and Cloud and Hines Allen, and now it's just about, what other pieces are going around that. Who's the face of the franchise? Who's healthy? Who's not? So like I said, too early for me to, like, I would say, be excited, but it's promising, and I think
Yeah.
it's really smart so far.
Side note is after hearing you say Mike T, all I can think about is there needs to be a podcast, Mike T and Shelly P. Shelly P just signed with
Oh,
them
that's right.
to be an
Yeah, good one.
assistant coach. And like not only would that be an amazing name for a podcast, or a YouTube series or
The
something,
knowledge that would be
um,
dropped.
oh my god. Those are two of the most elite basketball minds in the
Yeah,
W.
you're asking me to
Very
comment on something I don't even. Yeah, they're way too smart for
well,
me.
no, but I agree. I mean, like, look, if we look at Washington, I think it's you look at the core of Cloud, Atkins, Hines Allen, and they're just missing that. I would say this: it's very similar to Chicago pre Candace Parker,
Hmm.
right? Where they have very very talented players, some of the best players in their position, but they need that one
Hmm.
give me the ball superstar. They
Well, and
need
that
that player.
and that brings us to Tina Charles.
That does bring us Tina Charles. Well, wait.
Am I
Before
jumping
we
the
get to
gun?
that, you're jumping the gun, Rachel. We have show notes for a reason. No, I'm joking. Before we talk about what we expect that hasn't been reported, kind of give you a peek behind the curtain for the fans, we want to talk about Athletes Unlimited. Um, I posed the question in the Winsidr Slack group. We're talking about this. What do you guys think that we should talk about? And that was one of the topics brought up that I feel like we should discuss. Now, I know you, myself, and some other people. We've been in a lot of group chats where this topic has been discussed. So I feel like I have a grip on your feelings on it. But I'm curious for you, like how you view AU and their is it a showcase? Is it an ability for them to one day become a G League for the W? Could they possibly overthrow the W? Like, what is AU in your mind?
Well, I think, full disclosure, I haven't even had a chance to watch it yet. Last week, week one, I was literally driving all over the Midwest and the South, doing some campus visits and running myself absolutely ragged. So I haven't even had a chance to watch it yet. I just kind of was able to keep up with some of the hype, and obviously am completely blown away by the content and the people there just absolutely busting their tails to highlight this thing. I mean, I'm blown away. And this is the stuff we've been talking about for years now. Like, hey, if the W would just take some of these people and look what they could do, and like the content and the interviews and the knowledge. I mean, it's just there's nothing, we haven't seen anything like it. So I'm really impressed with just, like, the splash that it's made, and it's only, like, a weekend.
And
So
I'll say also, Rachel, like, because I know you haven't seen it yet, and for the fans who, excuse me, haven't watched a game yet, the coolest thing, sideline reporting could use some work, fine. But the coolest thing for me, and I know it's easier when it's one arena, they have like 5 different angles going.
yeah,
It's
that's cool.
so much more fun to watch when you hit these different angles. The production value,
Yeah,
in many ways, not just the people who they brought in, but the production value of the game itself. We can
yeah.
talk about other stuff, but the game itself, the production value is so good.
Well, and it provides an opportunity. I mean, I've talked to coaches and GMs who've flown in. Obviously, they want to be a part of it. They want to see what's going on. They want to get their eyes on some players during this free agency that they might be, wanting to talk to or have conversations there. So, like, it provides an opportunity for, some players to get noticed, to elevate their play. Like, Mercedes Russell was playing phenomenal in that. And um, I think that it's all good. Like, there's it's not possible that there could be any negatives to it, and I don't know what, in terms of it overthrowing the W, or, I don't know that, like, it's fair to go to that conclusion at this point, because it's just such as this hybrid different thing. It's so foreign. Um, so just still kind of wrapping my mind around it, but there's no doubt, like, these players are having a blast. It is grabbed the attention of nearly everyone at this point. and it creates opportunity. So, I've heard people compare it to like a G League. I don't know that that's even fair. I think it's probably an alternative, like we said, to like not having to go overseas and a different option.
But here's the thing, Rachel. Realistically, like from the articles I've read, play all the players are making around 20K, right? And now it's just what is it, a 5 week, 6 week season? So like obviously that's good money for that amount of time. And the top end players who are making all the bonuses are like for different the way it works. I'm not going to get too detailed in it because I don't fully understand all the finer, whatever's small print as they say. But essentially, like if you a team doesn't win the championship, a player does. And so if you hit all these bonuses of being an MVP, being a captain, this and this, then you can get upwards of 40K. So again, I want to be clear about this because I think there's some confusion. Rachel, you've played professionally overseas.
On like the lowest level imaginable, but yeah.
Okay, but my point is like realistically a WNBA player who's going overseas is making more money than that, correct?
Yeah, yeah,
So
definitely.
I guess what my point is more so is I want people to understand like it's not like all right, I want two things. One, I don't want listeners to go, "Oh my god,
Well, but they're
WNBA
also
players are going overseas and only making 20K."
no, but like there's a big difference of, the contract that I made versus Jonquil Jones's, $1 million contract that's going on. I mean,
But and that's what my point is
right.
like at AU, not only like it's a lower level of basketball, and I think that's where you start talking about like G League stuff, whatever. It's an opportunity for players who want to be able to stay in America to make some money playing basketball. And possibly we have seen some reports of GMs inquiring
Mhm.
about players in AU
Well,
who have
and
turned some heads.
and
And I
you're
think that's what it
stateside.
is.
Yep, you're
Yes.
stateside, and you have a phenomenal amount of coverage of people that are just diving into this thing with 2 feet, which is amazing. I mean, that in itself, just the promotion that can come from it,
Yeah.
it's huge.
It's huge. And yeah, so that's what I think. I mean, I think in my mind it's not a viable way to overthrow the W. In my mind, there is a degree of the G League aspect and I think almost, you know, I would hate to say like in a perfect world in my mind, AU would be going on, either during the WNBA season or right before. And there would be, if there could be some sort of partnership between the W and AU, obviously, I don't know the ins and outs of that, but it would be great to see it in a way of like the W would allow you to hold X amount of AU players on a practice squad roster or something like that, where we've seen this before where it's a situation and we had this issue sometimes in the bubble or during these COVID seasons where I think it's been exacerbated that 12 people on a WNBA roster is not enough, right? Like DC last year for multiple games was playing like a 7 player roster. That's ridiculous. Um, and so I think that's where we can find a way, a middle ground of finding a way of using this together, right? Because the whole point is to give these people opportunities.
Well, and at the end of the day, I think if nothing else, it puts pressure on the WNBA
Yep.
across the board to just be
Yep.
better. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, well, let's talk about what to expect that hasn't been reported. And we'll dive into this just briefly. I know we like to keep it under 30 minutes.
Yeah,
We're
we
really
also said we'd
pressing
talk
that.
about Connecticut, so we need to go back to them too.
Okay. Well, first let's talk about this and then we'll go back to Connecticut. Connecticut, I know no, first let's talk Connecticut. Connecticut's scary, but the thing is like who's taking that last shot? It was the question years ago when Courtney Williams was on the team originally, and it's the question now. You've added Duana Bonner. This team is a scary team that's added talent. The question is, the same question we've always had. Can they get over the hump? It's really this year or not, right?
I would say so. I mean, you know, the thing that's I'm most excited about is this is the vision that Connecticut's had for itself for a long time. We just haven't really had it be able to see it in fruition. I mean, between injuries and people sitting out, Courtney Williams getting traded. I mean, it's just every year there's been something. So now you have, you know, this genetic makeup of this team that has a longevity aspect, but hopefully, knock on wood, we're seeing them out there together, you know, playing at their best and being healthy. But so I agree, it is now or never. Like, I would say if it doesn't work out this year, that's got to be a massive disappointment. I mean, everything about this team has been designed to win now. It's kind of like the Chicago Sky. I mean, maybe not as pressing, but we were like, man, this Sky roster is being built to win a championship right away. Now it's interesting because we're sitting here saying run it back. It's very possible that a year from now, Connecticut kind of looks the same, and we're saying, okay, it's now or never. But for Connecticut, I think they're going all in and with that vision. And I don't want to say if it's a bust if they don't do it this year. It's not possible to do it next year, but 100%. And I mean, how can you not be excited about seeing a healthy Alyssa Thomas out there with, John Cole Jones and the confidence she's been able to play with after last season? And then, you bring in Courtney Williams back into the mix. That's going to be really interesting. But Bonner, I mean, I don't think you necessarily have to have that one person to take a shot. That's what I kind of like about this team. It can be someone different any given night. But I understand your question as well.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's an interesting one. And I agree, right? Like this is what we expected. This is the vision. Will it come to fruition is the true question. Um I'm excited. I'm intrigued. It'll be a very very interesting season to say the least for this team. Um yeah, I'd agree with everything you said. I really
Okay.
like to disagree with Rachel if our listeners haven't figured that out yet. Um, but let's talk about what to expect that has not been reported yet. Um, I mean, do you want to talk Liz Cambage or should I, Rachel? Because I know Liz Cambage, you kind of put the basketball world on pause when a few years ago you broke the news about Liz Cambage demanding a trade, requesting a trade, whatever verbiage you prefer to use from Dallas. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe I'm like leaking information that isn't supposed to be public. That her preferred choice at the time was LA, wasn't able to happen. She ends up going to Vegas, having an amazing time in Vegas, and having some success, but not the ultimate success.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I mean,
What are you hearing? What are you thinking about Liz?
it's no surprise that we've all kind of thought for years that Liz would end up in LA. Um, that would make a lot of sense to me now. She's switched agents, and there's been some changes from that aspect. I don't think that really changes anything. Um, I think we everyone's always like, oh, she need a big market where there's opportunity. I think all those things would make sense. But for me, I'm with everyone else. I think she ends up in LA, but they're going to have to be really aggressive to make that happen. They've got to move. They've got to move someone, a contract. They've got to make a trade. They've got to open up cap space. They can't just blindly go sign her right now. Some major movement has to happen first. So that's the question. What does that look like, and who is that? Outside of LA, realistically, who has the opportunity to sign her? I guess you could look at Atlanta, as a major market, and they've got the ability to make a move like that. But besides those two, I don't really know. I don't see her going back to Dallas. Phoenix, it's going to be really difficult for them to do anything.
Could you imagine BG and Liz on the
No,
same?
sure
Like what?
can't. Oh, that would be an absolute
No,
nightmare.
I agree with what you're saying. I think it comes down to Liz to LA, right? Like there's in my mind, there's only 4 places in this league that I could truly see Liz based on the fact that she's expressed she wants a big market. New York, LA,
Yeah,
Vegas, and Atlanta.
right. And
Vegas is out, in our
Mhm.
opinion, unless like something crazy happens. New York seems to be out.
Yeah.
Do they want that? I don't know. That brings Atlanta, who, based off of my reporting, and what I've said on the episodes, and I'll hold to it. I don't think she fits the culture of that team, right? Like they're looking for the hard workers who are going to set examples for the other players on this team for long-term success. Like signing Liz seems like more so of a short-term success move in their mind. Like in my mind looking at that team. And then that just leaves LA. And it makes pretty obvious sense because if you look at this team, they need a big to pair next to NECA,
Mhm.
unless NECA's the one that they're going to have to trade to make room for her. But I would be shocked to see NECA go and Shanae stay on the the
Right.
Sparks roster. I think it comes down to, you look at those protected contracts, one, maybe two of those players are going to have to move to make things happen. And I think there's some viable players
Yeah.
who we could see move in that regard.
Yeah, I think if you're LA, the targets have got to be like a Tina Charles or a Liz Cambage, or I mean, maybe you look at an Emma Mieseman. You need
Good luck.
yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't see that necessarily working. But you need that win now mentality. You've got to bring a piece in there that's a game changer, and you've got to shuffle around whatever you can to make it happen. Now, the hard part is like you've got to make it work. Like there's so many trades being talked about on a daily basis that never come to fruition. Like 90% of them never come to fruition. So for things to be discussed and talked about, and this is with any team, this isn't just LA, this is any team in the league. It's just for that to actually happen. It takes some time, and I don't know when that will be or how that looks. I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to question: can LA even get it done if they wanted to? That's the point of that question. So I have to think that they would be targeting, um, one of those high profile, bigs on the interior.
All right, so another move, another big name. We've talked about Tina Charles a lot, or a fair amount, I guess. Um, I think something that we both expect, Rachel, is Tina Charles to Seattle. It makes sense. She has that
I
Yukon
mean,
connection.
you're the one that tweeted the picture the other day.
Well, here's my thing. Here's my thing. Like, yes, you know what? Famous people hanging out, New York bred people hanging out, blah, 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 Yukon connection. There's so many elements that go into this, but let's be real. I don't want to use terms like ring chasing because that's what they said about Angel McCautry. Um, and she kind of got PO'd about that. And so apparently players don't like when they're termed ring chasing. Um, but what I would say is like you look at Tina and you think, okay, what teams can you place her with where she has a legitimate chance at a championship? That's why she went to Chicago. It wasn't just Coach T. It was the combination of
Sure.
Coach T, and on top of that, that they had a good team and they just never were able to get it together with the whole,
Yeah.
you know, Elena Deldon, Emma Mieseman, other players missing because of X, Y, and Z. And I think at a certain point, I mean, we saw the writing on the wall in her exit interview where she was basically just um, hating on DC and like I don't want, but in the sense of like I don't want to hate on them, so let's not talk about it. Um, yeah.
Hmm.
Any thoughts? I mean, I think that's a scary combination of Sue, Tina, Stewie,
Listen,
and Jewel.
yeah, yeah. I mean, to be determined about Stewie. Obviously, to be determined about a lot of things in Seattle right now. But think about this: Sue Bird comes back. It's like all in 1 year. Let's just load this thing up. Let's get Tina a ring. Let's run it back with Jewel. Let's run it back with Brianna. We've got Bird in here. I mean, everything aligns in that scenario where you're like, holy crap, like if you can have that agreement and get everyone to kind of buy into that vision. I mean, let's be real, everyone in the world wants Tina Charles to get a ring, and this is the best way for her to go do that. She fits this roster, she fills a need. I mean, if it doesn't happen, quite honestly, I'm going to be extremely disappointed. So yeah, there's that.
So something that we have to talk about is the news that came out literally as we're recording this. Emma Mieseman going to Chicago. I mean, the scariness of this Chicago Sky team. We were just talking about, you know, all of this news and all of the craziness of what it could possibly mean, and this team possibly making a run and whatnot for a back to back. When you talk about pairing Emma Mieseman with this team, I think it becomes like you have to a degree give them a
Yeah,
favorite, right?
100% as of right now. I mean, or the early
Yeah, well,
favorites. I
Rachel,
mean,
like that's the other thing. We get like when we talk about favorites, we're talking about in this exact moment of time. We're not talking about a week down the road, whatever. Like if Emma Mieseman and Candace Parker, right, and Azrae Stevens and Vanderquigs and Clea Copper are on this team, you're looking at a championship level team to run it back. I mean, that's scary.
well, it's a championship level team with a core.
with a core who
and
just won it.
different pieces different pieces that just fit this roster so well. It's the same team, but it's not the same team. It's almost like, in some ways, depending on how this works. I mean, again, Misamin, I love the fit with this style of team in Candace Parker so much. I mean, essentially, Dolson goes to New York and you replace Dolson with Misamin. And you can't argue about that, in my opinion. I mean, as much as I love Dolson, what she's done for this team, this is a hell of a move. Um, Immediately are the winners of free agency so
Yeah,
far.
I agree. I mean, we're gonna have to do a whole episode once this all becomes official in a couple days and talk about it more. But having that skill set, right? Like, I'm I want to put this in a term of, and I don't want anybody to take this the wrong way, but like comparing players. When you talk about Emma Mieseman, she was the 2019 Finals MVP. We talked about her pairing of Elena Deladon and her in the past. We've talked about it many times. Now we're talking about pairing Emma Mieseman, Candace Parker, Azrae Stevens. Like that they have so much size, so much length, so much ability to play at various aspects on the court. This is a scary, scary move that says chips in, let's run it back.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And I mean, it makes sense. You don't see that fitting in Washington with what they're able to work with on this cap. People have been talking about it, speculating it. But yeah, it's chips all in. We're doing this back to back. We're going to run it back. Kind of similar to, what we've talked about with Seattle. Now, it's to be determined. We don't know as much as we know about Chicago at this point, but aggressive moves by these GMs to win right now. I think the three that are it's Connecticut, it's Chicago, and it's going to be Seattle. Those are the three that are like, we're going all in at this point. Now, you might be able to throw Phoenix in there to be determined, because obviously there's a run it back aspect with that veteran core, but with the moves we've seen early on, that's where we're at.
But let's not count Phoenix out. I think they got a few things up their
Uh-huh.
sleeves. We'll be back though, because it's just the night before. Once the free agency holiday begins, it's gonna be crazy. You're gonna hear a lot of our voices, so I already preface this with an apology.